Welcome to the SBI podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is Greg Alexander, CEO of SBI, a B2B sales and marketing consulting company dedicated to helping you make your number. You're listening to the weekly SBI podcast series. And today I am joined by Jim Wetekamp, who is the CEO of BravoSolution, a leading provider of software and services that help procurement professionals in the areas of spend analysis, sourcing, supplier performance management, and a few other procurement-related processes. Bravo is differentiated because it has over 65,000 procurement professionals in 70 different countries, leveraging its technology and services, which gives the company unmatched domain expertise. Jim has over 20 years of business experience, all in the procurement/supply chain area, highlighted with a 15-year run at VerticalNet, which is now part of BravoSolution. During his tenure, Jim spent time leading product management, software development, finance, and general management. He's very well-rounded, and he received his education from Indiana University. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Okay, I just read that at the end of 2014, you guys reported your 14th consecutive year of revenue growth. Is that true?
Had a pretty good year of growth year over year. A lot of that coming from a business that's quite globally diversified. So as you mentioned, it's got quite a large scale. About 25% of our revenue coming from the Americas and 75% coming from Europe and rest of the world.
Yeah. I mean, 14 years in a row of growth, even a little bit of growth is pretty impressive. I mean, that's a consistent track record. And what I find really fascinating about it, if we think 14 years ago to today, I mean, it was a tough time to make that happen. We had the dot-com crash. We had a severe recession. We went to a couple of wars, and yet you continue to grow. So how'd you do it?
I think that BravoSolution has proven to be an organization that's been agile to what the market needs. So one of the key strengths of our business has been, the individuals leading it in all of the different markets and the folks on the ground operating from a commercial standpoint, apt to what their different markets needed in terms of a procurement solution provider. Over that 15-year period, that's been in some markets being more consultative or services-oriented, and other markets being more technology-driven, and being able to adapt to the different demands of the market over that period. The one thing that's been consistent through that economic period has been, the need or the requirement for a solution provider that'll put savings on the table. What's changed over that period of time has been capital budgets versus operating budgets, the need to be more creative around how you drive savings and potentially tie yourself into the success of that savings, or how creative you can be with a business case to get the solution off the ground.
Yep. Okay. I was excited to have you on the call today, or on the podcast today, for this reason. When I was looking at your bio in preparation for the interview, I cited, your historical career history, at least how you have it represented on your LinkedIn profile and what it says on your company website. And it cites product management, software development, finance, and general management. And what it didn't cite was, head of sales, VP of sales, or chief marketing officer. And I just wanted to make sure before I go into my next line of questions, because that's distinctive, and I want to probe on that a little bit, because you're a CEO who put 14 years of revenue growth, together. Your company strung 14 years of revenue growth back to back, and yet it's led by a CEO who, traditionally didn't come up through sales and marketing, which is very unique, and I'm curious as to how that happened. So before I leap there, is that a true statement? Have you ever been the head of sales or the head of marketing?
I've never been the head of sales. For a brief period of time in VerticalNet, I was head of marketing. When you look at that trajectory of growth for the company and how we've moved along, again, it's certainly on the backs and for the effort of the combined team that's been a part of this organization since 2000 when it was founded. When you look at the timeline of that progression and what we're seeking to do here, BravoSolution has historically been a business that, when you look back in time, was isolated a little bit in its impact from focused, and additionally a business that had traditionally been a little bit more professional services oriented than it had been technology. It's been a balance that's been maintained at just above 50%. What we're seeking to do now and where we're focusing our business from a growth standpoint is to grow that technology aspect and really look to, again, seize a shift or a change in the market that's becoming more self-service, it's becoming more demanding of easy to buy, easy to implement solutions, and really look to now push that growth more on the technology side. So my role coming into CEO last year, the background that I have on the product side, so in the areas of product management and solution strategy, serve well in that aspect of the next element of transfer.
Okay, got it. We have a lot of listeners to our podcast and people that consume all of our content that are CEOs of companies of similar size as BravoSolutions, especially in the technology industry. And many of those CEOs are trying to grow like you're trying to grow, and they have a very similar background that you have. So thus they're drawn to a sales and marketing consultancy like SBI. It makes sense. They're augmenting their own expertise and leadership skills, with some specialty expertise externally. So just the reason why I want to probe in this is because your leadership, either at the functional level or now at the CEO level, has contributed to this growth. And without this, laser focused on sales and marketing, which means you're growing through an integrated strategy. There's a product strategy, there's a services strategy, there's a finance strategy. You mentioned in your intro when I asked you how your company was so successful for so long, you specifically cited the team and the key leaders in the region. So there's obviously a well thought out talent strategy. So this is the area that I really wanted to probe on. And I want to get your perspective on this. We just did a really quick back of the envelope study, and we looked at the biographies of the CEOs in the Fortune 100. Now, granted, very small sample size, but we were just trying to do some quick math. And only 2 of the CEOs in that sample became CEOs directly from the sales leaders chair. One just recently got announced, Chuck Robbins at Cisco Systems, and the other, Mark Hurd of Oracle. And everybody else either came from finance, general management, or engineering. And it was surprising to me that so few CEOs rose up through sales, and even fewer have rose up through marketing. Why do you think that is?
I don't know that I've done enough analysis on the subject to be able to answer that from a global standpoint. What I can say is that my experience in working with sales leaders from different organizations is that you definitely have a DNA makeup that orients a lot of those individuals, I think, towards a very focused and strategic element of the business, right? And those are individuals that are hugely goal and objective and number oriented. They're very much about delivering to the commitment that they have oriented towards the business as far as what the expectations are for growth and how they're going to achieve it. And that's just a particular makeup of somebody find commonly into that sales leadership standpoint. It's not always the case, I think, that those same individuals are motivated to be in a position that requires more operational oversight, more general management oversight, more finance oversight, or HR, et cetera. And I guess the equivalent that I'll use for that is, folks that I've seen, the general manager aspects. I think some take to it and enjoy it, and like that increased diversity of experience, and others don't and prefer to really be at the tip of the spear, oriented towards the growth of the business, the interaction with the customers, the accumulation of the commercial side. So I think it's less around the competencies and capabilities of those people, because I think when you look at sales leaders, and many of them I know, the ones that I've had the benefit of working with, the most senior sales leaders that I've worked with in the past, I wouldn't see any reservation in working in a company where they were CEO. I think it more has to do with the desire of what motivates them to get up in the morning and what they want to do every day. So that's my observation. But I haven't done a lot of analysis on that subject. So.
No, that's all I wanted was your observation. I certainly wasn't expecting you to do any analysis, and I didn't give any of the questions ahead of time. It's an interesting thought, though. I hadn't considered that. Here I am thinking that maybe just the people that hire CEOs, boards, and investors, maybe they think there's something lacking in the competency, but you gave me a different perspective, which it's the other way. Maybe sales leaders enjoy being sales leaders, and they don't want to take the job as CEO. So that's interesting. All right, we're going to take a short break here. When we come back from when we come back from the break, we're going to kick around some practical ways to get these two different people, these CEOs with who didn't rise through the sales ranks, and classic sales leaders, to get them on the same page in what we call strategic alignment in pursuit of this top-line revenue growth. So stick around after the break. If you're enjoying this podcast, you're going to love SBI TV, and this is our monthly television program. You might not be familiar with it, so here's some information on SBI TV. You are watching SBI TV. This is a monthly web TV show featuring guests just like you, executives trying to grow their revenues. Each month, you can peek behind the scenes and watch your peers discuss their strategies for how they make their numbers. You are not going to want to miss this. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Before the break, Jim and I were discussing how the CEO and the sales leader can get on the same page in strategic alignment and going after top-line revenue growth. And I'm going to use a simple framework here to shape our discussion today. And the key here is getting the CEO strategy and the sales leader sales strategy together. So for the purpose of our very short interview today, let me just lay some things out there. In a classic sense, strategic planning, and many of our listeners are heading into the strategic planning process right now. You have this kind of sequential process, and I'm not suggesting it's the right way to do it, but this is, out of the textbook, so to speak. This is the theory. We start with some market research that says, we're going to understanding of the markets we're going to compete in. That progresses to a corporate strategy, which is a resource allocation effort. We're going to allocate people, money, and time in the following ways. That usually progresses to a product strategy, which says, these are the products that, our customers are going to buy because here are their set of problems. That progresses to a marketing strategy. It says, here's how we're going to drive demand for these products, which leads to a sales strategy, which says, here's how we're going to convert that demand into revenue. And then, of course, underlying all that is a talent strategy, which says, here's how we're going to build a team capable of, those previous 5 steps. So as we can see with this, granted, overly simplified explanation, there sits a lot between the CEO and the sales leader. There's market research that maybe the sales leader isn't looking at. There's the whole corporate strategy, which is a massive thing in and of itself. There's product strategy, which he might not be classically trained on, as well as marketing strategy. So, Jim, let me turn my attention and ask you some maybe unfair questions, but your observations, to use your terminology here, would be very helpful, especially thinking at it from the CEO's perspective. So how should a CEO drive the output of market research specifically, and I'll get to the other items here in a moment, into the creation of a sales strategy? How do we make sure the sales leader is being outward in, so to speak?
Well, I guess I'll just relate it to how we do it at BravoSolution. It heads a little bit from a different direction. So certainly from my standpoint, standpoint, I'm standing backwards and behind the corporate strategy and working across the major functions of our corporate strategy, our marketing, and our sales leadership to devise and orchestrate that. And then really it's the sales leaders' responsibility and accountability to take that, map that against their experience of the market, develop that into the market penetration plan and the sales strategy, and how that rolls out across our different markets. So, that's really the sales leader, BravoSolution anyway, the sales leader's response to the corporate strategy that's looking at that integrated view of, this is the problem we're seeking to solve. This is a solution we've put on the table to solve it. These are the key differentiated aspects of it. There was a certain evolution of a market view that built to that. Now, as I survey the areas of opportunity across that market, how do I segment that, attack it, and really look to seek to get that solution out into that market? And then it becomes a cyclical approach of reevaluating the response the market's had to the solution. How does that then in turn turn around to influence corporate strategy, product strategy, et cetera? But really, the sales leadership at BravoSolution is taking that element from a strategic standpoint versus just responding to a sheet of paper that's been handed.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's encouraging that you encourage your sales leader to take it from there and drive it into his plan. Very often we see the opposite happening. The sales leader gets the corporate strategy from the CEO, and his or her response is, the numbers you have in here are based on faulty assumptions, and I can't hit this. So next time you develop a corporate strategy, boss, make sure I'm part of the process, because this thing has no chance. So what do you say to that?
Our orientation of the 3-year plan that we have and how we keep that rolling is something that was built collaboratively across corporate strategy, sales, and marketing together. So as we built that and we orchestrated that, there were puts and takes as we developed that 3-year plan, where sales leadership sitting around the table and acknowledging all the elements of that as we devise it.
Okay, very good. So there's a long-range plan, not just the annual plan, and the sales leader is a key member of the team that creates that plan, if I heard you correctly.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, the next thing, obviously, as part of that long-range plan, which is great that we just stumbled into that, is the product strategy. So there's, a set of assumptions, again, regarding that, a product roadmap that, is the output of that, a release schedule, a launch schedule, and it's the sales leader's responsibility to drive those products into the market and make sure that the assumptions in that plan, particularly market share and revenue by product line, et cetera, is obtained. How, I'm assuming now, based on your previous answer, that the sales leader is involved in setting product strategy. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. A strategic leadership standpoint, that product strategy is put on the table for sales leadership and open for feedback and influence, certainly around the standpoint of, is that a product strategy or product roadmap that's going to serve the sales plan or the growth plan that the sales function is accountable for. So there's an influence aspect that's quite heavy from the sales side, along with the influence that's coming from customer, market, and our corporate strategy.
Okay, very good. All right, excellent. When we come back, we're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, we're going to pivot a little bit towards marketing, which I think will be an interesting conversation based on how this has gone. What we're learning from BravoSolution today, and specifically Jim, from the seat of the CEO, is how collaborative the process needs to be and how involved people are in the long-range planning, which is somewhat unique. Okay, if you like hearing directly from CEOs like Jim, you may want to subscribe to the SBI magazine. We feature articles on CEO best practices. They tell you what they're doing and try to make the number. So if this is the type of content that you enjoy, but you want to put something in your briefcase when you're getting on a plane, subscribe to the magazine. So here's some more information on that.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI magazine. Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Welcome back, everybody. Before the break, Jim and I were speaking about the 3-year long-range planning and how the functional groups are integrating their activities under Jim's leadership to make sure that we're responding to the market in the most agile way we can. And this was a key contributor to their long, successful track record here in being responsive to the market's needs. And up to this point, we've been talking about the relationship between the CEO and the sales leader, which was very productive. And then we just got into the conversation between the product leader and the sales leader, which was really interesting that, there's really no king there. It's, it's two people working together in pursuit of a common goal. And that is very rare. We normally see an organization fall into one of two categories. One is the product leader is the king, and he tells the sales leader, these are the greatest products in the world, and if you can't sell them, you're an idiot. Or the other side of it is the sales leader says, I'm the greatest salesperson you've ever seen, and the products aren't very good. The fact that your two guys are working together, your team is working together is really insightful. Let's inject marketing into the equation now, and their job is to drive demand. So in your market, specifically what it is you're doing, what's the relative importance of marketing, maybe relative to product and sales? Is it like what we're seeing in a lot of other B2B worlds where maybe it wasn't as relevant in comparison to a consumer-based business, but its relevancy is on the rise today?
I would definitely equate it to something that's of growing importance. And, to put a little context at BravoSolution, from a global marketing standpoint, that's a relatively new function for us. So when I talked about the growth over the past 14 years, those have really been, growth stories that have been continued basis. And what you ended up with was the BravoSolution that wasn't one BravoSolution, but it was really 12 from a marketing and go-to-market presence standpoint. So over the past 10 months, we've been on a journey to really kind of make that one consistent global brand and message and really take the thought that we're better together than we are apart, and how can we take the best elements of BravoSolution and put them on the table consistently globally to help accelerate our growth. And the marketing function has been a huge enabler around that, pulling together that message and that brand, getting a concise promise to the customer developed, and then taking that into an execution plan on how we carry out that go-to-market messaging on a market-by-market basis. So something that we weren't doing on a global basis this same time 12 months ago is something that we definitely are putting a lot of now in terms of global marketing, product marketing, that integration of product marketing into product strategy, R&D, and sales. So it's a huge focus for us right now.
So what drove it? I mean, a year ago you weren't doing it. Now you're doing it. You realize that one Bravo being driven consistently into all of these different parts of the world that you're competing in was an advantage for you. So what happened in the market that made that a priority?
I think our customer is getting increasingly global. Our competition is getting increasingly global, and we ourselves, even despite ourselves, we're getting more integrated on a global basis. So as you started working where these different markets needed to start collaborate on things like global account strategy or playbooks against common competitors or a consistent brand to market analysts and how that gets evaluated by Global 1,000 companies, et cetera, just kept getting to the part where our investments in local marketing activities weren't being leveraged on a global basis, so we had a lot of inefficiency. And additionally, that inconsistency we thought was slowing our progression in the market and negatively impacting us. So we decided to make a change.
Interesting. So the way that the buyers were engaging in the responses that were coming from your competitors, drove the new strategy, which is another proof point that you guys are doing a great job listening to the market, and that's one of the reasons why you've done so well over such a long time period. Some of my client base, which might be listening today, they're rejecting this concept. They're saying in the B2B world, marketing is really not that important. Branding, for example, is not that important. Consistent messaging. I'd rather have, a highly customized regional group of people versus, consistency across geos. And they're resisting this, and they're saying that, hey, my buyer isn't changing as much. And, sometimes we get engage to evaluate if that's true or not. And when the findings come back that says that's inaccurate, that your buyer is changing and you need to do what you've already done, they're resistant because they don't think the organization will receive it well. So you're about a year into this. How has BravoSolution received, the new marketing approach?
Well, I think we're still quite young in the stages, but I think the reaction has been positive. And so as far as that that kind of comparison you made, I think perhaps for BravoSolution, it's about achieving a balance. Already extremely strong, in individual markets, but certainly missing so across that from a global basis, that this global marketing focus we think will make our message more focused, more consistent, and add, again, consistency to that other element of the transformation that I mentioned earlier on in the discussion around a shift from to more of a technology base in the profile of our solution in the market. So marketing is going to be a key element behind that. Where it provides value from the standpoint of the customer base, I don't think from a customer standpoint really looks and evaluates you purely based upon the marketing, but it is certainly an important element around how you're developing prospects and moving them along the process, how you're getting noticed in the first place, et cetera. Once our folks are in the room and once those individual markets are operating with potential clients, I think our team but certainly I think what we're learning over these past 10 months is that marketing can be a huge enabler to increasing the pipeline, getting attention of the market, and having them better prepared to receive the message we want to put on the table once they're in the room.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to summarize it. Marketing can help them get in the room, but once they're in the room, they got to take over from there. And that's a really interesting way to look at it. When your company made a decision to shift more towards products and less towards services, as that balance changed a little bit, did that cause you to rethink the marketing strategy, or was that an event that was independent of what we just talked about regarding marketing?
It certainly played a role in it. Professional services and consulting sale is very much you're selling the person on the table in front of you, right? And the summation of their experiences, their role, and their contribution, and the team that you see in the room around you. And the focus that we have is certainly BravoSolution will continue to have a strong differentiation in the expertise and the people and the team, and that'll be an important thing about what we wanted to do. But we wanted to increase in proportion, the technology aspect of what we do, and that's more around the positioning of the robustness of the technology. What are its capabilities? How does it drive value in an organization? That's something that's more consistent on a global basis than some of the. It's something that is, from an impact standpoint, is talking at a more senior level of the organization oftentimes. So marketing and was a huge consideration in that shift to be able to drive that consistency of messaging and be able to drive marketing campaigns and programs that would get us in the door to the right person at the right time.
Yeah. Okay. So for those listening out there, if you're in the process of shifting your balance from services to product, even a little or a lot, that should be a moment that you pause and say, hey, what does this do to my marketing strategy? And take the lead here from Jim. My compliments to your marketing team. I was preparing for this interview, and I went out to your website and some social media sites to try to understand you guys as much as I could. And the messaging was super crisp. I understand who you were, what you did, who you did it for, and how you were different in like less than 5 minutes. So please send along my congrats to your teams that crafted that messaging.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. We're going to take one more break. When we come back, I'm going to ask Jim to summarize what we spoke today. There's some action items you can get working on right away. If you enjoyed this interview, you should subscribe to our blog. Each day we publish a best practice that can be read in under 5 minutes right off your mobile device. So what we're doing today is a 30-minute interview. It's called long-form content. If you prefer your content in more digestible chunks, the blog is for you. So here's how to get some more information on the blog.
Each day, you receive hundreds of emails, tons of text messages, countless telephone calls, and sit in too many meetings. How do you find ideas to make the number with all this noise? The SBI blog filters all this nonsense for you and presents only first-rate ideas to make the number. Simplify your life. Subscribe to one blog and read the best content. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com and subscribe today.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Greg Alexander, CEO of SBI. I'm joined today by Jim Wetekamp, CEO of BravoSolution. We've been talking about CEO strategy and it cascading and integrating with all the different functional strategies as we get ready to head into 2016. And we learned a lot. That's the problem. We learned too much. So let's try to turn this into some action items if we can. And we're kind of running out of time here. So, Jim, I'm going to ask you to bring this home for us. So if you were to speak directly to the audience and maybe give them 2 or 3 things that they can do immediately following this show from the CEO's perspective to try to set themselves up for next year as it relates to creating that annual strategic plan, what would those 2 or 3 things be?
As we looked at the plan for us, and again, it's specific in our context, a lot of our plan for the next 2 or 3 years is oriented with this change in focus or a bit of this transformation. So what we did in order to get ourselves firm on the plan and how we were going to achieve it is we spent some time and established a specific function or program management office. So the idea of the fact that a lot of things we were doing were asking us to change internally and externally, and we needed to have a change management plan oriented with how we communicated internally on why change, why now. So when you think about, and you've mentioned it several times, 14 years of growth, it might ask you within the organization or outside, well, why are we doing, why now to make some of these modifications? And so that's an important question that you've got to make sure you're answering along the way, to all the folks that are with you every day so that they're aligned and understand the strategy and why we're changing, that they're getting communicated to in the right intervals and at the right level of detail. That was a huge aspect of what we did, and it's that same vehicle that we're using to keep strategy aligned with sales, aligned with marketing, so that we're all headed in the same direction.
Yeah, interesting. So for those in the audience that might not be familiar with a PMO, can you just briefly describe what that is?
Sure. It's a process where we've basically taken all of the strategic initiatives that we think are key to the achievement of the 3-year plan, and we've, as a management team, assessed them from a risk, a change, and a financial context as far as what's the budget it's going to impact we think it's going to have on the end result. We've used that to prioritize those activities, and then we're using that same vehicle to keep ourselves accountable on the timelines to achieve it. So all these aspects that we're talking about, introducing global marketing where there wasn't global marketing before, driving a shift or an increased focus on technology while at the same time maintaining our past successes. All these things need to be done in a way that are clear, communicated well, and managed in a transparent way, so all the folks have a sense of what's happening and why. And that project management office is a steering committee and a set of activities around accountability and communication associated with those initiatives.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Appreciate the definition. I'm a big believer in it myself, but I wanted them to hear that directly from you. Okay, I'm going to direct the audience to 2 helpful resources. First is SBI's annual research report. This is titled How to Make Your Number in 2016, which just came out. And in it, you'll find ways to make your number next year and lots of tools and processes and exercises to put yourself through. So if you want a copy of that, go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-report, 2016-report. The next thing I would point you to is that if you read this report and you need some help getting yourself through it and doing the exercises and maybe getting your peers together to think through these things, we've built a half-day workshop where one of our experts can come on site and help you through that. So if you want to schedule a workshop with one of our strategists, salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-workshop. So, Jim, on behalf of everyone who's listening in my firm, I want to thank you for giving us your time and discussing, this tricky challenge that we talked about today. You guys are doing a lot of the right things, and you're a model for all of us to follow. So, thanks for giving us unselfishly of your time.
Thanks a lot for having me. I enjoyed it.
Okay. And to my audience, thanks for tuning in. I wish you much continued success as you try to make your number. Take care.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.